They told me to hand over my car keys while sitting in the house that legally belonged to me. Hi, I'm Lorelai. At 16, my parents left me at a train station with nothing but $5 and a warning not to call for help. 20 years later, they tried to take my car, my company, my life, and they did it in my house. Have you ever had the people who abandoned you come back, demanding what you built without them? Tell me in the comments, how would you respond if the same family that disowned you tried to repossess your freedom? Let's go back to the day I walked into that family meeting and lit the match. They were already seated when I walked in, the entire clan, neatly arranged like props in a staged production. The house smelled of lemon polish and forced nostalgia. Nadine was the first to spot me. Her fake gasp echoed through the dining room like she'd seen a ghost instead of the daughter she'd once disowned. Well, look who finally remembered where she came from, she said with a brittle smile. I didn't respond. I walked past the antique sideboard, still cluttered with the same dusty angel figurines, and took the empty seat farthest from the fireplace. Gerald didn't look up. Marissa gave me a weak, unreadable glance before folding her hands back into her lap. The silence pressed in until Gerald cleared his throat. Glad you could make it, Lorelai, he said, tone clipped. We have some things to address. Here we go. We've noticed some attitude problems, Nadine chimed in. The media, the company, the stories online. We didn't raise you to act like this. I looked at her. You didn't raise me at all. Her face twitched, but she smiled right through it. Be that as it may, we think it's time for a reset. Gerald leaned forward, extending a hand. Give me your car keys. I blinked. Excuse me? You're clearly overwhelmed, he said, as if that explained anything. You'll be staying here until you come back to your senses. The car's a distraction. And your company, Nadine added, voice syrupy sweet, could use some parental oversight. Just until you stabilize. My eyes swept the room. A few aunts nodded. Cousins avoided my gaze. This wasn't an intervention. This was a hijacking. I reached into my coat pocket, pretending to retrieve my keys. Instead, my hand brushed against the edge of an old wooden rocker beside me, the one I used to be forced into for hours as punishment for talking back. It creaked quietly under the weight of memory, and something inside me clicked into place. I pulled out a red folder instead. As I stood, the room seemed to freeze. The air thickened. You want my keys? I said calmly. That's cute. But let's talk about what really matters. I dropped the folder on the table. A thick packet slid out, paperwork stamped, notarized, and irrefutably legal. Property deed, legal owner, Lorelai Ashcroft. For a moment, no one moved. Then Nadine's eyes widened. What is this? That, I said, is the deed to this house. Signed over to me 8 years ago when you needed money to avoid foreclosure. I didn't say anything then, but today seems like the perfect time. Gerald stood abruptly, face reddening. You ungrateful little. Careful, I interrupted. You're standing in my living room. Gasps flickered through the room like sparks. One cousin dropped her fork. An uncle coughed uncomfortably. Nadine stood, tears welling like clockwork. We're your parents. And I was your burden, I snapped. Until I became useful. You left me at a train station at 16 and never looked back. Now you want my car, my company, my life?
No.
Gerald's voice thundered. You think your money makes you better than us?
No, I said.
It makes me free. I reached into my pocket again, pulled out my car keys, and tossed them on the table. They landed next to the deed with a satisfying clatter. Consider this your eviction notice. 30 days. Starting now. As I turned toward the front door, A child's voice cut through the stunned silence. Mom, who is she? Why is she making Grandpa so mad? The woman beside him pulled him close, eyes wide but silent. No one offered an answer. I took another step toward the door, and that's when it happened. A sharp crack echoed behind me. I turned just in time to see a framed family portrait fall from the wall, shattering on the floor. Glass scattered like confetti across smiling faces frozen in time. No one moved to pick it up. Fitting. Outside, the air was crisp with December bite. I walked past the frost-tipped hedges, past the cracked front steps I used to scrub on Saturdays while my parents napped. When I reached the car, I paused, just for a moment, and looked back. The windows were full of faces, still watching me, still silent. My phone buzzed. Rachel's voice came through. Ready to go full scorched earth? I didn't hesitate. Call Marcus, I said, sliding into the driver's seat. Let's light the match. I sat alone on the balcony of my Austin penthouse, fingers wrapped around a glass of red wine, eyes drifting across the skyline I had built with blood and defiance. The house below was quiet, but my mind was not. It churned with the sound of my mother's practiced sobs, my father's explosive fury, and the echo of a family's silence dressed up as concern. A notification lit up on my phone. I didn't bother to look. I already knew what it would be. Accusations, pity bait, sympathy for the parents I had just evicted. The confrontation from the night before hadn't ended at the dining table. Someone had leaked footage. Maybe an aunt, maybe a nosy cousin. Whoever it was, the video was online and the internet was chewing it alive. She evicted her own parents. Money turns people into monsters. Ungrateful rich brat. I took a slow breath, tried to anchor myself in the present. But the past had sharper claws. I was 16. The train station reeked of hot metal and old oil. My duffel bag dug into my shoulder. My last memory of that moment? A text message. Figure it out yourself. Consider this a life lesson.
So I did.
I figured it out one night at a time on couches in shelters, sometimes on benches. Until Aunt Callie Mae pulled up in her old Jeep and took me home without a single question, only silence and fury simmering behind the wheel. That version of me, the skinny, scared girl with nowhere to go, was a ghost I thought I'd buried. But this morning she was back. And she was done being silent. Have you ever discovered that the people who raised you were also the ones who broke you? When silence wasn't absence but punishment. If you've ever been erased by the ones meant to protect you, comment 7 below. Let's see what I did next when silence was no longer an option. The office door opened. Rachel entered holding her phone like it was radioactive. You need to see this. She hit play before I could reply. Gerald and Nadine appeared on screen, sitting on a local morning show set decorated with pastel paintings and potted plants. Nadine clutched a tissue like a lifeline. Gerald looked grave. She won't even call us, Nadine sniffled. We're her parents. We gave her everything. And now we're afraid we'll be homeless. She shut us out, Gerald added. She's forgotten what family means. My pulse pounded. The hashtags were already trending. Hashtag Lorelai the Ice Queen. Rachel's eyes narrowed. They're not just playing victims. They're setting up something bigger. They want sympathy, I said. And leverage. Marcus appeared on a video call, sleeves rolled up, voice calm. They're building a foundation for a filial responsibility suit. Emotional groundwork first, then legal. They abandoned me, I snapped. In Texas, that doesn't matter, he replied. Not legally. But if they stir up enough outrage, public perception will turn. Clients back off. Partners question you. It's not about the law. It's about the image. I stared at Nadine's tear-streaked face frozen on screen. Rachel crossed her arms. What do we do? I stood. We burn it down. I recorded the video in one take. No lights. No edits. No script. Just me. A quiet room. And 20 years of silence, ready to shatter. They left me at a train station when I was 16. I spoke slowly, every word shaped by scars. I held up a photo of the station, showed the bus ticket I bought that night, played the voicemail for my mother 3 days later, not asking if I was safe, but warning me not to contact Aunt Callie. I let the audio play raw. Everything I have, I earned. Not inherited. Not gifted. Built from nothing, while they told the world I didn't exist. I posted the video at 9:03 p.m. By 9:05, it had 10,000 views. By 9:10, Rachel had to mute the office phone to keep it from crashing. Comments poured in like a flood. Holy sh*T, this broke me. I believed her parents. I feel sick. She was a kid. A kid. She's not the villain. She's the survivor. Rachel laughed through tears. Marcus sent a single message. You just nuked their PR. I didn't smile. Not yet. The next morning, a podcast invited me to speak. I declined. Then the biggest daytime talk show in the country reached out. I said yes. I walked onto the set in a black suit. No frills. No makeup beyond the basics. I didn't need softness. I needed truth. The host greeted me with her signature smile. Lorelei, the world is buzzing. How do you feel? I looked directly into the camera. I feel like I'm finally telling my story, and I won't be silenced again. The host leaned in. Do you hate them? I paused.
No.
But I will never let them rewrite who I was or what they did. The silence that followed was louder than applause. When I returned to the office, Rachel was waiting. You broke the internet. Before I could respond, she handed me an envelope. You've been served. I opened it. Gerald and Nadine Ashcroft versus Lorelei Ashcroft. Grounds: emotional defamation. Elder neglect. I stared at the lawsuit. I felt the familiar burn in my chest. But my hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. This was war. And I had just lit the second match. I didn't even flinch when the lawsuit hit my desk. Rachel placed the envelope down with more care than it deserved, like it might explode if handled wrong. But for me, it wasn't a surprise. It was inevitable. Gerald and Nadine Ashcroft versus Lorelei Ashcroft. Grounds: emotional defamation. Elder neglect. I skimmed the documents, letting the ridiculousness of the accusations soak into my skin like poison I'd already built immunity to. They were suing me for hurting their feelings. After everything, I reached for my phone and called Marcus. He picked up on the second ring. You've seen it? I asked. I have, he said. It's nonsense. But nuisance lawsuits have teeth when handled with media pressure. I'm not settling, I replied. I didn't think you would, he said, with the barest smile in his voice. Let's take it to court. We met that afternoon at the county courthouse. The air inside smelled like bleach and cold stone, a familiar scent that always reminded me of finality. I had my own parking spot now, a perk of being a public figure, and a target. The hearing was only preliminary, a procedural appearance, but I came dressed for war. Black suit, hair pulled tight, eyes lined like razors. Gerald and Nadine arrived 10 minutes late, flanked by their attorney, who looked like he specialized in pity-based litigation. Nadine wore a pale pink cardigan and carried a tissue she dabbed at nothing. Gerald wore a gray windbreaker, the kind men buy when they want to look frail instead of malicious. They didn't look at me, but I didn't look away. We sat in silence as the clerk called our case. When the judge entered, everyone stood. The sound of chairs scraping against tile echoed like gunfire. Their lawyers stood first. Your Honor, we represent Mr. and Mrs. Ashcroft, who have suffered extreme emotional harm due to the public actions of their daughter. This includes slander, abandonment, and deliberate attempts to damage their livelihood and reputation. Livelihood? They hadn't worked in years. Marcus stood next to me, cool as ever. Your Honor, he began, we intend to file for immediate dismissal. We have extensive evidence that the plaintiffs not only severed contact with my client over 20 years ago, but engaged in repeated acts of emotional and physical neglect during her formative years. He placed a folder on the bench. Within this are text messages from the plaintiffs instructing the defendant not to contact them, voicemails from the defendant's mother disowning her, and testimony from a legal guardian, Callie Mae Hudson, who took in the defendant at age 16 after she was abandoned at a train station. The judge flipped through the documents, eyes scanning the pages like someone reading a badly written novel. Nadine sniffled dramatically. I gave birth to her, she whispered. Gerald growled. She's ungrateful. We built her. I stepped forward. With what? I asked, voice steady. You left me on a platform with nothing but a $5 bill and a bottle of water. I built myself. You just didn't expect me to survive. The courtroom held its breath. Sit down, Ms. Ashcroft, the judge ordered, but he didn't sound angry. If anything, he sounded intrigued. Marcus continued calmly. We are also filing a counter-motion for the plaintiff's attempt to exploit familial ties for financial gain and for pursuing a knowingly frivolous lawsuit. He handed the judge another document. Additionally, Your Honor, we request a cease and desist order regarding further public statements made by the plaintiffs that could impact my client's reputation or ongoing business affairs. The judge leaned back, tapping his pen thoughtfully. Motion to dismiss will be reviewed. A formal decision within 3 days. That was enough for now. As we exited the courtroom, Gerald pushed past me. You think you've won? He spat. I looked him in the eye. No, I said. I think I haven't even started. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Nadine reached for his arm, suddenly looking less like a broken mother and more like a cornered fox. Outside, reporters were already waiting. Rachel had anticipated that. She stood to the side, signaling to keep walking. I didn't stop for interviews. I didn't need headlines. I needed results. When we returned to the office, Marcus's assistant was waiting. There's something else, she said. You need to see this. We followed her to a private room, where a copy of a property transfer request sat on the table. It was a scanned document, submitted just 2 days earlier. It listed my childhood home, the house my parents were currently occupying, and someone had forged my signature. They were trying to sell it. Without me. Without my consent. Marcus stared at the form, his jaw tight. This was processed through a third-party title company. Not local. They thought they could sneak it through. I didn't speak. I was too busy breathing in through my nose and out through my teeth, controlling the fire building in my throat. Let's freeze the title, I said. And then? Rachel asked. I turned to her slowly. Then we burn what's left. That morning, I didn't even bother with coffee. I needed something stronger, certainty, control, silence. I reviewed the deed again in my office, fingers gliding across the seal, the notary stamp, the clean black signature, mine. Below it sat the forged copy. Same name, different pen. The signature looped wrong, hesitant where mine was sharp. Sloppy. Marcus slid the results of the signature analysis across the table. Confirmed. Biometric inconsistency. Pressure analysis off by 11%. It won't hold up in court for a second. Rachel added, IP log shows the request came from a hotel in Waco. 2 days after the first media attack, probably trying to strike before the lawsuit tanks. I stared at the fake deed again. That house was more than real estate. It was a crime scene in slow motion. When we walked into the recorder's office, I could feel the weight of the air, stiff, recycled, tainted with the faint scent of toner and body heat. The receptionist looked up, but didn't ask our names. She knew who we were. That's what viral scandal buys you. Notoriety on site. As we waited outside the registrar's glass-walled office, I watched a woman across from me sign papers while her toddler screamed in her lap. No one flinched. Even in chaos, the machine of paperwork kept churning. Bureaucracy didn't care about stories. But I was here to make mine matter anyway. Inside, Registrar Jennings typed with the kind of sluggish precision that only comes with decades in civil service. His keyboard clacked unevenly. I could hear each plastic spring bounce back with faint resistance. Marcus presented the flash drive. Jennings plugged it in with a soft click. The screen loaded our evidence, timestamp submissions, side-by-side signature overlays, voice clip of me recorded in Marcus's office just that morning. Jennings didn't blink. He just nodded. The property is now frozen. No drama. No gavel. Just a flat keyboard click. But that sound? It was more powerful than any courtroom gasp. Back in the car, Rachel tapped away on her tablet. Lock system reset. Power account migrated. Smart locks rekeyed. Cameras rerouted. They're shut out. I stared out the window. What if they show up? She asked. They will. That night, I didn't wait for it. I watched it unfold. Security footage flickered across my monitor. Night vision kicked in, washing everything in cold green. Gerald's frame filled the camera at the front door. He pounded with both fists, shoulders hunched in rage. Nadine stood behind him, barefoot, clutching a bathrobe that dragged in the dirt. She pressed the doorbell again and again until the chime finally cut off. Then she crumpled to her knees. In the corner of the feed, a shape moved. A neighbor across the street, phone raised, filming everything. I zoomed in, saw a flash of their porch light reflected in the camera lens. Proof. Witness. Backup. Rachel watched over my shoulder in silence. This is gold. No, I said quietly. This is justice, finally visible. Then she turned up the internal mic. On the footage, Gerald yelled through the door. This is Stiller House. We made you. The mic picked up the low whine of an automated voice. Access denied. I stood slowly, crossed the room, and shut off the monitor. In the silence that followed, I could hear the faint buzz of city traffic 25 floors below. But louder still was the silence of that house, the one that had taken everything from me, and now gave me nothing. The next morning, sunlight poured across my desk in golden lines. Rachel handed me her phone with a new post pulled up. Nadine again. She locked us out like animals. We have nothing. No food. No heat. Rachel scoffed. They didn't even call the power company until last night. We have the logs. I read the comments. Monster. She deserves prison. Cutting off heat? She's pure evil. Fake daughter. No context. No conscience. Just mob justice in a comment thread. Then Rachel handed me the printed utility transfer confirmation. I held it up to the light. My name, clear as day. They wanted to paint me as cold? Fine. Let me show them what cold actually looked like. Later that afternoon, Marcus sent over one last document. The property access revocation certificate, notarized and filed. I signed it at my desk, the pen gliding like a scalpel across the page. Security camera stills from the night before lay beside it. One of them showed Gerald yelling up at the camera, hands raised mid-scream. Another caught Nadine mid-fall, her hand gripping the edge of the porch. I tucked them into a file labeled Hard Truth. Then came the email. A journalist from the Tribune. We're preparing a story on forged title transfer and online allegations of elder abuse. Would you like to comment? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed, no comment. Then deleted it. I wrote, they forged my name. I just reclaimed it. And hit send. I knew they would come back harder. That's what people like Gerald and Nadine do when they lose control. They reach for fire. And when the fire doesn't scare you, they set it on everything you've built. The story hit the front page 2 days later. Billionaire heiress accused of elder neglect, property theft. I stared at the headline on the Tribune site, watching my own face stare back from the top banner, frozen mid-interview, lips parted, eyes cold. The photo was 2 years old. The angle made me look arrogant, which was the point. Underneath, quotes from anonymous sources. Some were obvious. A former assistant I fired for leaking contracts. A distant cousin who once asked for a loan and didn't get it. Their words dripped with half-truths and venom. She changed after the money. She always acted like she was better. I remember, she said once she didn't owe her parents anything.
Of course I said that.
Because I don't. Rachel paced my office like a loaded gun.
We can fight this, she said.
We sue for defamation. That's their plan, I said. Get me into court again. Drain my focus. Distract the board. Because while I'd been handling lawsuits and freezing assets, something had slipped. Our quarterly report. Shareholders were worried. Investors edgy. 2 major partners, one in San Diego, another in Boston, had put meetings on hold. The stink of scandal was spreading. Marcus walked in with the latest numbers. PR dip is at 18%. If it hits 25, that's when they'll start pulling money. I didn't answer. I was watching the footage from the night Gerald and Nadine were locked out. Again. This time, slowed to half speed. Watching Gerald's eyes burn as he shouted into the camera. Nadine collapsed on the porch, looking up at the camera like it was a noose. They're not backing down, Rachel said. I don't want them to, I replied. Marcus raised an eyebrow. It's time we stop responding, I said. We go on offense. The first move was the interview. Not soft. Not filtered. No sympathetic lighting. Just me and a chair in a dark studio. The walls black, the chair metal. No distractions. Just truth. I sat down across from the host, a respected journalist who'd called me unapologetically dangerous in an op-ed 5 years ago. Now he looked like he was waiting for blood. You've been called cruel, cold, even a fraud, he said. What do you say to your critics? I say look closer, I said. Cruel is abandoning your daughter at a train station. Cold is faking her signature to steal her house. Fraud is pretending to be a parent only when the cameras are rolling. The host didn't interrupt. He let the silence sit. I leaned forward. They think if they cry loud enough, people will forget what they did. That's their weapon. Tears and lies. He nodded. Do you hate them? I don't hate them. But I won't let them use my name anymore. Have you ever had someone weaponize your name? The very people who broke you now using your story to play the victim? If you've ever had to reclaim your own truth, drop a comment 9 below. Now, let's see how I turned their last lie into my loudest truth. By the time the interview ended, I knew it had landed. You could feel it in the silence of the crew, the way no one blinked during the taping. It aired that night. The reaction was nuclear. My inbox filled in hours. Not with hate this time, but support. I saw my mother in your story. My father did the same. Thank you for speaking out. #ReclaimYourName started trending. Survivors of toxic families came forward. A movement was forming, and I was its reluctant face. Meanwhile, Gerald and Nadine retaliated. More interviews. One with a right-wing outlet claiming I'd stolen their legacy. Another with a morning show where Nadine pretended to faint mid-sentence. Then they released a home video. Grainy, oversaturated footage of me at 10 years old blowing out birthday candles. Gerald's voice singing. Nadine handing me a gift. "This is what we lost," the caption read. It was manipulation. But it worked. For some. I cried watching that. How could she do this to them? She was loved. But I remember that day. The cake was store-bought. The gift was a used book. And I'd gotten slapped that night for not saying thank you fast enough. Marcus turned off the screen. "They're getting desperate. Let them," I said. Because next, I continued, we hit back where it really hurts. The press conference was held in a glass atrium downtown. No stage. No teleprompter. Just me, a single mic, and truth. I brought documents. Photos. Emails. Audio. Everything I had, categorized and time-stamped. The reporters came armed. "Why now?" one asked. "Because they've had the microphone long enough," I said. "Are you trying to destroy them?" Another asked. "No," I said.
"They're doing that to themselves.
I'm just turning on the lights." Then I played the voicemail from Nadine. The one where she threatened to burn everything if I didn't pay up. The room went silent. Then questions came faster. Louder.
Some outraged.
Some stunned. I answered them all. By the end, I wasn't the villain anymore. I was the match. Now, I stood in my office as my phone lit up. Marcus called. "We just got word." "What?" "Judge dismissed their lawsuit. No trial." I exhaled, slow.
Rachel hooped in the background.
"They'll appeal," I said.
"They won't win," he replied.
"Then it's time," I said, already walking toward the glass wall of my office, city glowing beyond. "Time for what?" Marcus asked. I looked down at the sidewalk below. Reporters still camped out, waiting for the next move. Time to finish what they started. And I hung up. Everything felt louder after the dismissal. The city, the wind, my own breath. Even the silence wasn't quiet anymore. It hummed with possibility. But I knew better than to call it peace. People like Gerald and Nadine don't disappear. They retreat. They fester. And then they strike when you think it's over. So I stayed ready. The day after the judge threw out their case, I held a meeting at my office. Marcus, Rachel, and my core executive team sat around the long glass table. The blinds were down. The lights low. The energy?
Coiled.
"We're not done," I said. Rachel leaned in. "You think they'll try again?" "I don't think," I replied. "I know." Marcus nodded. "So we preempt them." I reached into the folder beside me and pulled out a photograph. Not recent. Printed, not digital. It showed a young man, early 20s, standing in front of my childhood home. His name was Tyler McKee. My cousin. Quiet, observant. Never had much to say. But last week he messaged me. "They're planning something bigger," his text had read. "I'll help you if you promise not to let them near me again." I scanned it onto the table. Rachel raised her eyebrows. "He's the source?" "He's the proof," I said. Proof that Gerald and Nadine were trying to gain conservatorship over my assets. They think if they get enough signatures from extended family, they can argue I'm mentally unfit due to childhood trauma. Marcus scoffed. "That's not how conservatorship works." "They're not trying to win in court," I said. "They're trying to win in headlines." Rachel stood, furious. "That's sick." "It's war," I corrected. And it was time to end it. The trap wasn't complicated. We staged a meeting at a neutral venue, a family reconciliation summit hosted by a well-known psychologist who owed Marcus a favor. Invitations were sent. No lawyers. No press. Just one final conversation. Gerald and Nadine arrived dressed like saints. Gerald wore a pale blue sweater. Nadine held a cross necklace. Their faces were taut with forced grace. I was already there, seated at the far end of the oval table, flanked by two silent observers. One was Rachel. The other was a notary. Neither said a word. Gerald spoke first. "We're here because we love you." Nadine nodded, eyes misted. "We want healing." I let the silence stretch. "Tell me," I said finally, "what healing looks like to you." Gerald cleared his throat, dropping all this drama, letting the past go, "and giving us what's rightfully ours," Nadine added, barely missing a beat. There it was. I smiled. "Funny," I said. I was about to say the same. I slid a document across the table. It was thin, neatly bound. The cover page read, "Affidavit of Witnessed Admission." Gerald blinked. "What is this?" "Your statements," I said, "about the night you left me at the station, about the forged signature, about the money you've stolen from my aunt." Tyler recorded everything. Nadine's face went pale. "You're bluffing," she hissed. Rachel pressed play on a small recorder. Gerald's voice crackled to life. "She won't give us the money?
Fine.
We make her unstable. Get power of attorney. Then we own everything again." Nadine's voice joined in. "She's emotional. That'll work in our favor." When it ended, the room was silent except for Nadine's shallow breaths. Gerald stood suddenly, knocking his chair back. "You think this proves anything?" "It proves everything," I said calmly. "And copies have been sent to my lawyer, the media, and the board of directors." Nadine lunged forward, face twisted. "You think this makes you better than us?" "No," I replied. "It makes me free of you." Rachel handed them both a final envelope. Inside, a legal restraining order.
Filed. Signed.
Effective immediately. Gerald read it, hands shaking. Nadine didn't even open hers. They left without another word. That night, I walked through the now empty childhood house. It was mine again, not in paper, but in presence. The walls echoed different now. Less like ghosts, more like closing chapters. I found an old photo album buried in a cabinet. One of the few things I hadn't touched since I was 16. Flipping through, I saw birthdays, holidays, forced smiles. But on the last page was a picture of me and Aunt Callie, her arms around me, my smile genuine. That was the real beginning. Not blood.
Choice.
I took the photo with me. Outside, the air smelled like rain, but it hadn't started yet. It just hovered, heavy and full. I stood on the porch and let it wrap around me. The phone buzzed. Marcus. Board vote came through. Full confidence. "We're solid." I replied, "Good. It's done." Another message popped up. "Rachel, you okay?" I stared out at the dark street. For once, I didn't feel watched, or hunted, or haunted. I typed, "I'm free." Then I stepped inside and locked the door. From the inside, I'm no longer surviving. I'm living on my terms, with no shadows trailing behind. The noise is gone, the lies are gone, and for the first time, the silence feels like freedom. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: blood does not entitle cruelty, and love without respect is just control in disguise. We don't owe anyone our suffering, especially not those who tried to break us. Have you ever had to choose yourself over people who were supposed to love you? Drop a comment, tell me your story, or just leave a 1 if this hit home. And if you've ever been told you were too strong, too distant, too much, know this. Maybe you were finally just enough.